to another episode of Askin, Axelrod. Do you guys want to introduce yourself?
All right, I guess I'll go first. I'm Michael Berry. I'm over at the Oak Street office. All I do is criminal law. So if you have any issues, if you're under investigation, been arrested, think you're going to be arrested, we can help
contemplating committing a crime.
Yeah, any one of those. We could talk you out of it.
Former Marine, former police officer. He's being humble. This guy has it all on his resume. Not enough ink when he talks about himself.
I don't want to brag. I don't want to brag.
I'll do it for you.
Thank you.
Very proud of Michael Berry.
Absolutely.
Jonny McCoy here, senior criminal lawyer over at the Oak Street office, and close confidant and friend to our host, and wonderful, wonderful intake coordinator.
Thank you.
Maria.
You're the best, Maria.
Thanks.
You're the best.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you. Smarties over here. All right, so we have a very interesting and common topic, right? We see this all the time in the office. So we're going to be talking about domestic violence today. Okay? Yes.
Not a fan of this charge. Yep. Not a fan of the action. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those difficult situations where if you do criminal defense work, this ends up on your desk, and it's difficult because it's not a traditional victim that you're talking with. It's the love of somebody's life in many instances where they were married for many years. So it's a difficult situation for sure. I'm going to let you ask your questions on it before I just rail off on it, though.
All right. So I figured you guys were literally perfect because with your police background, right? And then your mental health background.
Well, and the first time I ever saw somebody arrested was for domestic violence, and it was my father. I was 10 years old, and he hit my mom in the face with a bottle. And the reason behind it was because my mom let me miss baseball practice. So, and then he made sure to tell me that it was my fault. Domestic violence charges, and what it can do to a family are something that I've experienced firsthand. In my situation, and we were in Orlando, and my father, I didn't really understand what was going on. I saw him being put in the back of a police car, and that scumbag, the only thing he said was, "Make sure your mom calls my attorney." And so that was the first time I ever heard that word, attorney. And here we are. I was the first generational attorney in my family. It was just something I really wanted to do. But he went, what I now know to be, I didn't know at the time, but he went to a diversion program for anger management, and he never hit anybody again. It worked. He was still a cruel jerk and said the most horrific things ever, but the physical violence ended. My therapist thinks it ended because the boys got big, and my dad's 5'9". But yeah, I mean, I've seen the inner workings. Like many of the cases that I practice on, I've seen the inner workings of the judicial system, and as a defendant, what it does to your family, and also as a victim, what it does to your family. My mom forgave him immediately, and Old South, kind of never talk about it again type situation, but it haunted my family to this day. It still haunts my family. I believe that my mom was killed due to domestic violence. She took her life 4 months ago, and
sorry to hear that.
Yep. She took her life 4 months ago. She waited until he left to go get her ice cream, and she knew he was going to be the one to come back and find her. But it was her final way of getting away from him. And there's a lot of talk about this subject right now with the Micah Francis case and the J.P. Miller. They're passing legislation about. I think it's coercive control. He was arrested for cyber stalking. My dad did all that. He followed my mom. They stayed married until the day she pulled the trigger and put that bullet in her chest. They were still married, but that doesn't mean that she wasn't experiencing domestic violence for the entirety of the relationship. And so I don't know what the answer is. You can't force a woman to leave him. I begged her. The police begged her back in the day, and I was there when she was like, I would rather be with him and be subject to this than be without him and alone, because I don't have anything else. And so I'm one of the most coercive individuals that you can meet, and I couldn't talk her out of it. And she died because of domestic violence. And I haven't talked to my father since the funeral because that's what I believe.
Terrible.
It's interesting you talk about the police aspect of it and the police bagging her because you do get that. And you'd show up and you get this woman that's frantic and she's like, could you just talk to him? And you're sitting there and you're having this conversation with somebody like, look, lady, I'm here for 15 minutes. I can't fix 15 years of problems in 15 minutes. And it's like, they're going to jail, Well, no, I want you, you get these things, you have no choice, And I mean, it's one of those that, I mean, it's bad for everybody. There's no winners in it or anything else, and you're just sometimes fixing the problem for a day when you arrest the person and everything else, because I mean, the prosecutor knows it, the defense attorney knows it. The most of the domestic violence cases that we get, it seems that I've had the most difficulty on, is when the person wants to get a divorce and then they weaponize the domestic violence in order to be able to get a divorce and everything else. I mean, I've seen both ends of it. I've seen the ones that are tragic and really bad. And I mean, obviously what you've said is, is heartbreaking when you hear that and you think about it, because I mean, it does happen, but then I've seen the other end of it where they use it to get the kids. They use it to try to exact some kind of punishment out of the person and everything else, and then the police would get cynical. You're kind of honestly joking with your buddies, you're just kind of, I mean, there's a joke where you go, look, either divorce him or make his dinner right. Yeah. It's kind of I mean, it's callous to say that, but you just get so frustrated, and it's the same. I mean, you'll go to the same house 10 times. 12 times and everything else. And you're waiting for the call when you finally get there and the person's dead and everything else. So, it's bad that way.
Yeah. And it's a good point that you made about that. I mean, 911 can be weaponized, and especially when you're trying to get a leg up on, somebody. But yeah, I mean, I've gotten in situations where I'm defending somebody, or female even, who was, the male called 911 on his wife, and there wasn't a domestic violence, but they pushed it and they pushed it and they pushed it, and then they go through the divorce, and he says, "Well, I called 911 multiple times because she was blah blah blah," and it's one of the situations where I would say that are dropped the most often. Is domestic violence for sure, and it's not because one of the spouses is in there begging to drop it, which happens a lot. But there is a lot of weaponization, and in any kind of family issues where somebody, says. I mean, my mom used to, go, "Oh my God, he hit me," and I'd be like, "Mom, I'm here. Like, what are you talking about?" But that was her way of just, trying to, kind of get the energy in the room that she felt threatened. But that's a good point, though.
That was actually one of our intakes. Do you remember he actually called the police on his girlfriend because she needed like mental help? He called, ambulance, 911, the whole nine, and then he ends up getting charged with DV second.
I mean, that's where you end up giving people advice, and it's like, look, I'm not. You don't want to tell people don't call the police, don't do this, but it's sometimes it only makes certain situations worse.
Yes.
Those type of things, and it's unfortunate because you get those type of things, but that was a prime example where he did everything right.
Yes.
And he still ended up
being the wrong.
Being in the wrong.
So to talk on that really quick, what is the law in South Carolina as far as domestic violence goes?
So for domestic violence, they have tiers, right? So you have, they have, and it's kind of counterintuitive because it's domestic violence third, which a lot are people, when you tell them, oh, that's the worst one, they're like, no, it actually, it goes in, descending order. So third
because of the third degree burn situation.
Yes, the third degree burn are giving somebody the third degree, right?
Yeah.
But DV third is, the lowest. It's a misdemeanor, carries up to, it's a magistrate level offense, but it actually carries up to 90 days. And you have DV second, which is a high level misdemeanor for 3 years. Then you have DV first, which is 10 years. And then you have a DV hand, which is a domestic violence high and aggravated nature. So that would be the categories. And then depending on, like for instance, for conversational purposes, your husband slaps you, right? That would be a DV third type of thing. Where not yours, obviously. You would slap when you slap your husband. Actually,
exactly.
I think if they told me he slapped you, I was like, there's something wrong with this scenario. I do not believe this at all. So
that's funny that you know that.
No, and it's
we know you.
And then depending on what happens during that altercation, if children are at home and they witness it, their sense perceptions and everything else, that would raise it to a DV second. Or if they take
Okay.
your cell phone in order for to stop you from calling the police, that would be another one. If you have a prior conviction of DV third, that would up it. And each one of those, you could take somebody's cell phone, or you could attempt to strangle them, cut off their airway, or their children could be present, or you could have a prior conviction. And all those, you'll kind of just up the ladder with each one of those on there. So it can kind of do that. And then,
So lots of moving parts to qualify something from a DV first.
well,
DV third,
yeah. And then there's a nuance with it where people think anybody in your household is domestic violence, and that's not really the law. Like, for instance, if somebody's married, that makes it domestic violence. Or if they, former marriage, if you have a child in common, if a man and a woman live together and everything else, or cohabitate, or have ever cohabitated. So you could have a boyfriend that you lived with for 5 years. If you've ever had a place together, that technically, that would be that, that would
That's
count.
crazy.
And I've seen the thing in Myrtle Beach where two people meet each other and they're dating, but they don't live together. They come stay in Myrtle Beach at an Airbnb or a hotel, and then they get arrested here for domestic violence, even though they have no place in common or anything else. They're like, well, you're here together, cohabitating, so we're going to count that as a domestic violence.
So what's the situation? Because I think that it's often asked a lot of times, well, does somebody have to get arrested? Like, do the cops have to take one of us?
I was always trained and told that, it's a mandatory arrest. If you show up on scene,
Someone is getting arrested.
and somebody, all it would be, he hit me. Okay, put your hands behind your back, sir. You're going to jail. That's it. I don't even really have to have, because there might not be any physical signs. They want you to determine who the primary aggressor is,
Right.
Because, sometimes, it's not clean, right? The altercation is not clean and everything else. One person shoves another one, someone smacks somebody's, frying pans get pulled out. I hate to say it, it almost sounds comical, but all those things happen, and you show up on scene and you're supposed to make a split second decision. Some people would arrest both people, some would determine who the primary aggressor is, and then that person's going to jail. But if we showed up and somebody said some kind of physical altercation happened, there was an arrest that was going to happen, because nobody's willing to leave, because you would never lose your job as a police officer arresting somebody for that allegation.
That's right.
If you don't, and somebody ends up dead, then that's, or worse, or in the hospital, then, and that was always the fear,
Right. Makes sense. Well, let's ask some questions.
Okay.
Askin Axelrod questions.
Askin Axelrod. All right. So, how would you differentiate between a one-time incident and a pattern of domestic violence?
What do you mean for us? Like, that's just I guess that's like a personal question, really.
I could see us using that, like, we're trying to determine that. If you're going to a prosecutor, you're trying to work out one of these cases that you're trying to, a lot of times, you get these, I had a past client, they got into an altercation at the airport, but these people were older. They're, older adults in their 60s. And everything else, but she didn't have anything else on her record or anything else. The embarrassment of getting arrested at the airport.
Oh, geez.
And then and people seeing it and it being on security footage and everything was enough to. I tried to explain to the prosecutor was enough, and there was nothing in her. If the person has a history of it, the way that they do, it used to be years ago that and the reason the arrest, it kind of to go back to what you were saying, but to piggyback off of it is, so many times nothing was done, and people would just show up and they make the person leave or do whatever, and then people ended up dead. Victims had better advocacy and everything else. So now with the mandatory arrest, I don't think you're going to know whether it's a pattern, because the police have been called numerous times. The person's going to have it on their record, or you'll just kind of get it and you'll see it in their relationship. They'll come into your office, and sometimes, even though they're not supposed to have contact together, they'll bring that significant other into the office, and they're sitting in there, and you can see the power dynamic between the couples and everything else. And
do you guys have that during discovery? Like, you're able to see how many times the police have come to their home, or?
Well, just arrest. We don't really know that, or the officer might say in the report, I've been out numerous times and everything else, but you'll see, you'll get their NCIC, and the NCIC will have, and it comes from every state, if they had any kind of instances, or if there was ever an order of protection or anything else in there, and they kind of have those things on that.
The reality is, we could go in there and say, oh, he said, she said, there's no evidence to the contrary, this, that, and the other. But my approach is always, and we have a pretty good system here in the 15th Circuit. For some reason, we have a really good belief in mental health and drug and addiction issues. The main drug prosecutor here, the one who oversees the entire drug team, is a wonderful human being who believes in addiction and recovery and all that other good stuff. It's just been great to watch. Because South Carolina's last in everything when it comes to mental health and healthcare and all that. But to see the 15th Circuit, at the forefront of it. So when I get a client and it's a repeat type situation, and they'll tell you like, hey, this has happened before, and this is my second time, and I'm blah blah blah. I don't even go to the prosecutor without sending my clients to therapy before, and I'll say, listen, they're already in therapy. Let's let this play out. Let's see, what happens to the relationship as they, try to mend things from behind the scenes. Because, I mean, honestly, like we could fight it. Michael Berry is a very skilled individual who looks at the evidence and can find a way in or out, or, some sort of evidentiary issue to get the case kicked, and everybody's a quote unquote win.
Right.
But if we go to it from an angle of rehabilitation, which is one of the three main pillars in criminal law, they call them deterrence, rehabilitation, and restitution. And we say, hey, listen, we're going to rehabilitate this couple before we come to you and ask you for mercy in this situation. The prosecutor, the state, the police officers are going to appreciate that far more than if we just go in there and say, hey, there was no plates broken, and we think she made this up, and here's a text message where she sent her friend a message saying, I finally got him, or something like that. So that's just how I approach domestic violence situations. We have an entire team of prosecutors that are only domestic violence prosecutors. So they see this stuff day in and day out. It's a crime that's committed often.
Very common.
Yeah. And like Michael B. said, you don't really even have to have physical contact for it to be domestic violence. And in many cases, it's not. But there's a belief that when you hear that word domestic violence and it's violence in it, that, it's a horrific situation when it could have just been an argument after a football game that somebody else called 911 on, said they're arguing, the police show up, they're still arguing because they don't understand the ramifications. Like Tristan said, police are hammers, and they only know to do one thing, and that's nail and arrest. They're not, they're not going to bring a mental health professional there. They're not going to sort it out. They're going to put cuffs on you if you're not going to settle down. And every single person in the world knows what it's like to try to get your best friend and her boyfriend to calm down in a fight. It's impossible. So,
especially when you have like alcohol involved.
Yeah, exactly. And so when the police get there, they have a daunting task. Every time the police get there, they're sober and they're approaching an alcoholic situation. And if there's no alcohol involved and it's still heated, then you're even more concerned. Because there aren't those heightening factors like alcohol that lower inhibitions and things like that. And so, yeah, I mean, I pretty much approach all of my cases after I go through the evidence and see if there's not a constitutional way to fight the case in a manner where I package it so that the prosecutor doesn't believe that these people are going to come back in, or that my client's not going to come back in and get in front of them, because that's the real concern. I mean, I had a really heated bond hearing yesterday. What a judge wants to hear is enough information that if I let this person out on bond, or a prosecutor, if I give this person this plea, they're not going to hurt the person. They're not going to kill them, and it's going to come back on me. And there's going to be all these comments in the media that are going to say, "Why'd you let this person back out on the street?" Right. So what I try to do is I try to package it in a real way where they believe if I show this person mercy, it's not going to come back to bite me in the ass.
Very good.
Very good.
Good tactic. All right, so what would you guys say is your most common defense when it comes to domestic violence?
I just told you mine. Mercy. Get them back in therapy, get them talking, get them communicating, get them anger management.
I mean, your biggest defense is if the people are going to stay together.
Yeah.
I mean, really, the ones that have gone the most sideways on it has extracted the most, I say, punishment from my clients are the ones where they're not going to stay together, then that's what's some of the worst ones I've had is when the person uses it, I mean, we could all say it was a bad incident, but I mean, I could characterize one in specifics that I had where, I mean, the guy, stellar person, a veteran, stellar military record and everything else, had one bad day on the beach, and he's fighting for child custody, having a divorce in another state and everything else, but she was able to hold that over his head. And I mean, he had to plead to something to where if they had stayed together, I would just have waited and waited, and a prosecutor would have to give him PTI or dismiss it or something, or at least a lower charge. But it just didn't happen that way. I mean, and sometimes you're able to convince. I mean, sometimes you one of your best defenses is that, at least to defeat the domestic violence, is they're not cohabitating. They're dating, but they don't really live together. This person has another residence. They get their mail here. They register to vote over here and everything. They just have a toothbrush over here. So, if we're, because the law doesn't really, I mean, there's case law, but nobody really defines. Nobody says what cohabitate actually means. It's all these other little factors that are going to go in there. So, and a lot of times prosecutors, if it's a coin toss and somebody's going to look at it, that's enough of a victory just to get the person to not have a domestic violence conviction on the record, because of just that connotation that it has. Other things that it's going to hurt them. Whereas if it's an assault and battery third, people hear it, it's different. It's a bar fight. It's simple assault. It's one of these things that nobody, people don't worry about that. When you hear domestic
it's literally
violence,
called simple.
Yes.
It's called simple assault.
But you hear domestic violence, people go, what? Huh?
Yeah.
They hear that type of thing, and it's just kind of different. So
one thing you usually see, though, if it's a first offense, like first time, he's never done this before, and I just want a divorce, or she's never done this before. I mean, we see females arrested all the time, is when the relationship's over and they fell out of love. Somebody wasn't ambitious in the relationship, or somebody got bored, and they just have grown up knowing, like, you don't get divorced because you fell out of love with somebody. You don't get divorced because the person's boring and your life is boring, and so they wait and they wait, and then whether it's the guy or the girl, and then they wait for that one night where things get a little bit hectic and a plate's broken. They call 911 and they ride that all the way through the divorce. They get the kids and everything, when in reality, they should have split up a long time ago. And
to avoid getting to that point.
Yeah. And that's a tragic, I mean, I'm not talking about situations where there's actual physical contact or violence, but I've seen situations where it was a heated argument and that person called 911 on the other person. And then in the divorce, that's all you see is, it got to the point where I had to call 911.
Actually, somebody called me the other day. A case, it was like 10 years ago, and he was looking for so they were now going through a divorce. At the time, he had gotten, I think it was like DV third he got arrested for. Mm-hmm. And now that they're going through a divorce, she's trying to use that against him. 10 years later, literally. Yeah. And he was calling us to get the affidavit that she wrote that this was not a common thing for him.
Yeah.
So, and now, 10 years later, she's trying to use it.
I've heard that, like, family law, they have CLEs and they're titled "Get the Spouse Out of the House" type of thing. No,
CLEs like to rhyme too.
No, but it's the name. So, and part of getting
what's a CLE?
A CLE, so like continuing legal education. So I've heard from some family attorneys, I've heard through the grapevine that they have CLEs called "Get the Spouse Out of the House," which means they weaponize, they use domestic violence, they use calling the police in order to be able to get the person out of the house and put themselves on a leg up, whether it's for child custody and everything else. So that current is always going to kind of be running through this. So at one point, I hear Jonny's, story at the very beginning is very heartfelt, and it kind of makes me feel bad for how cynical I've become with these and everything else, because for every one of these that they're cynical, there's another one that, the people don't need to be together, or something should have happened and everything else. But it's something that's kind of just running through the undercurrent of this, that there's some true people out there that need help. And I mean, the law has a purpose, but then there's one where, I mean, it's just, they're
going to use the system to their advantage.
They are.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
I think if you really want to make an impact in criminal law, and especially in this domestic violence arrangement, spend some of that money and actually have therapists that are required through the court system, whether you get to see somebody while your case is going on, because my mom would have never left. She didn't know. And
it's that fear, like you said, of the unknown.
Well,
having nothing else.
I think if she would have had a therapist there going like, hey, this is not normal, like your kids, because my mom would always say, we're staying together for the kids. And literally, if she would have left when I was 10, I would have probably have never ended up in an inpatient mental health facility when I was 26 years old or however old I was when I went in. I think I might have been 30 something. But what do you do, right? I mean, you want to repair people, but the criminal justice system only knows how to repair people by removing them from the street. And if you really want marriages to work and keep the family together and everything, there should be more mental health services in the criminal justice system, in my opinion. We got great outlets. Like they let you go into mental health treatment court and stuff like that in the 15th Circuit, but not always. And I think that it should be an option for especially in domestic violence cases for you to go to therapy, for that be your punishment for on both hands, is that you have to go to therapy once a week for a year.
Definitely.
See what happens.
All right, guys. Well, we are going to wrap it up with one last question.
Okay.
So what advice would you give to somebody listening who may be charged with domestic violence?
Well, yeah, I mean, any person who represents themselves has a fool for a lawyer. That's what the United States Supreme Court said. For a client. For a client. That's right. Any person who represents themselves has a fool for a client. That's what the United States Supreme Court tells you. So you need to get a lawyer. You need to get a lawyer who understands, criminal law, first of all. There's a lot of lawyers out there that are in other areas that take criminal cases because the economy's so bad. But you need to get an attorney that has experience representing people who are charged with the same thing you're charged with. And then I think that you immediately need to start on mitigation for yourself, and it'll be good for you and your relationship, but it'll also be good for your case. Mm-hmm. Immediately contact a therapist, immediately start talking to them, like, how do I get my anger under control? Even if you're sitting there and you're like, I didn't do anything, I'm not angry. Yeah, you did, bro. Like, you did. And it may not have been to the level of a crime, but you could have held back. You could have not said that extra thing about her sister, or she could have not said that thing about you being impotent, and you need to work on that the way that you communicate with people. If you ever, really want this knock on your door to stop, you need to, heal yourself from within. That's my advice. But I mean, you need to contact an attorney, obviously.
For sure. And we do offer free consultations, just so you guys know.
And you get to talk to Maria when you call.
That's right. Call and ask for me.
That's right.
I'm a good listener. And I'm trustworthy.
Oh, boy. Here we go with the trustworthy thing.
Cheers.
We're working on it. You heard a little bit of my story. I don't trust anybody. Yes. I do trust MB, though. You know why? Because he's quiet and he's confident, and you're just like, this guy right here, he's been in combat.
He's like a ninja.
Yeah, he's been in combat. He's cool and calm under pressure.
I need to take some of your cool and calmness.
Yeah, you do.
I wish you'd calm down.
Yeah. maybe. How many coffees is that for today?
That's my second.
And then you'll have one at what, 4 o'clock?
No. I'm trying to, because I need to sleep better at night, so I'm trying to cut off the third coffee a day.
Okay. Well, yesterday we went to Dunkin' Donuts at 4:30 in the afternoon.
4 o'clock.
Unbelievable. But
we're also looking at houses. So
yes. And by the way, give yourself a plug. Go ahead. One of the best real estate agents in the area. She's done a wonderful job for me. She will do a wonderful job for you. You deserve it.
Thank you.
Thank you for helping me.
I take very good care of my clients.
Yes.
Because they trust me.
Oh, here we go with that word again. Trust. She's throwing that T word around.
The big T.
Yeah.
It's a word for today. Trust.
Trust.
Don't trust yourself and hire an attorney if you're charged with
don't trust yourself.
With domestic violence.
Yeah.
That.
So
yeah, very good. Well, thank you guys for watching. Like and subscribe, and you can expect our next podcast to drop next week, once a week.
Thank you, Maria.
Thanks, Maria.